Hello. Good afternoon, everybody. I say good afternoon, it's 8 o'clock here in the UK, so it'd be good evening. But welcome to ALR Tier 1. We're here for another week. Only three... No, hold on, let me check the calendar. No, we're only halfway through the season, sorry. There's 6 rounds left, including this one, as everyone is now readying up. So we're here in Belgium for the first race. So Austria, the end of Austria last week marked the halfway point of the season. We now start the second half with Belgium here, and championship's getting pretty spicy. We actually have Rudy currently with a 32-point lead, but I'm sure there will be people trying to chase that one down. I think Rudy's also had issues with overheating in his PlayStation today. Hopefully that doesn't get in his way, because if it does, that could quite dramatically swing the championship, especially with both McLarens only separated by 2 points in second and third. So could be quite a crucial day for the championship with all this hot weather, overheating PS4s and stuff, and PS5s for those who are lucky enough to have them. So yeah, we'll just have to wait and see, but hopefully everyone's able to make it through the race without too many technical issues. We did actually have a couple of drivers who had errors joining the lobby, so again, hopefully they don't run into any issues in the race. That would be quite sad. But yeah, we start to, well, 7 of them have readied up out of the 14 that are racing today. Not great attendance, but I'm guessing it's the start of the summer period, it's getting warm, people are away on holiday and stuff, so not much you can do about it. As we now start. And I'm continuously getting pinged on Discord. I think it's just the stream blink is coming up like 20 times. Don't know why that channel's not loading. Oh well. But Belgium's definitely one of the races that in the past has maybe thrown up a bit of weather. It's a bit like Britain and Austria in that way, where the weather is a bit unpredictable, but you find that in most European tracks. It just seems to happen quite often. These 3 in particular. So maybe some weather can spice up this race. I think I've expressed my dislike of the rain in this game before, and just how it seems to kill any kind of racing, because you just can't overtake in the wet without the driver ahead making a mistake. Speaking of that, wet qualifying. Wet qualifying I'm not so against. I do enjoy driving in the wet on this game. I feel like wet qualifying is just a little bit extra added on, so a little bit more skill, a little bit more everything just required for a wet quali session. So yeah, I think they can be quite exciting, quite good. Hopefully we see some cars on track soon. One of the Renaults looking to leave the garage. I think the only Renault here today is Ladamala, so it will of course be him. It's going to be the first driver on track, but it kind of worries me that not many people are coming straight onto track. It either makes me think that this rain's going to clear and they don't think there's much point in running in the rain, or they haven't prepared setups for the wet and are now scrambling to make some adjustments to be able to drive fast in the wet. As Bread is the second driver out on track. Just give me a second, I'll bring up the track mapping, lap data, telemetry. Let's go. Well, we know what tyre they're on, but yeah, that looks good. As Ladamala's very nice helmet there. It's very simple, black with the yellow spots all over it, but it fits the Renault quite nicely. So well done to him, I guess, for the nice helmet. I'm not really sure where I was going with that one, but pointing it out. And we're just going to ride on board to see what kind of lines Ladamala's going to be taking here in the wet. It shouldn't be too different from the dry. F1 2020 wet lines really aren't different from the dry lines. You can even see there's like that slightly darker patch of drier line, which is the line you want to take. It's got the most grip, and it is just the same as the dry racing line. But hopefully it's something that can be improved on in future games. But I'm not too hopeful. Okay, coming into the final couple of corners here, just to see him, he doesn't decide to take a wider line. You see a lot of drivers choose to take a wider line into the final corner to get a better exit, but obviously in the wet you don't really want to be accelerating on the super wet stuff, so maybe that's influenced that a little bit. He locked up into turn 1 there, very, very gentle through Le Source. He gets a decent exit though, and he's now going to run up to Eau Rouge. I'm expecting a lift here in Eau Rouge, if not a small bit of brake. Yeah, there's the lift. No brake. Okay, so just a lift through Eau Rouge here for Ladamala as he continues down the Kemmel straight towards turns 6, 7 and 8. Quite a gentle application of throttle through there. He did use a lot of curb on both sides though, so showing that he does maybe have a bit of confidence to use the track, as there's a McLaren having issues there in the final sector. I think that's Bread. No, Bread's in the pits, so that's Tal Piz. What did Bread do? He came out and came back into the pits, very strange, but just seeing the line, he's taken a fairly normal line there through Pouon, and now into 4th gear for the right-hander. He's going to switch back over to the left, holding it in 4th. He actually short shifts up to 5th, works as well. In the 3rd gear for the next right-hander as we come into the final sector. Quite nice on traction there. We had a bit of oversteer moment, but it wasn't too major and he was able to correct it fairly easily. So now coming into the fastest corner on the track, Blanchimont, and finally the bus stop chicane, braking just before the 100-metre marker board. Into 2nd gear, getting it slowed down, opening up to 2nd half, still in 2nd gear, not short shifting funnily enough through the exit. Probably should short shift through the traction, but he does cross the line for a 52.9, which is the first lap of this session. Now let's see who's on lap behind. Looks like Jonah and Salt. Sorry, Salt has invalidated his lap, so we'll find Rudy, I think, is going to be the next driver to cross the line on a valid lap as he comes into the bus stop. Much more aggressive on the curbing there as he comes into the bus stop, but goes a bit deeper, but does use the short shifting out of the final corner. That is going to gain some time. He's going to cross the line. It's going to be a 52.7, so he's got 2/10 over Ladamala so far. Jonas coming up to the line now. What's Jonah going to be able to do as he crosses the line? It's a 52.2, half a second up on Rudy there. And the next driver coming to the line would be Polhouse. He's invalidated, so it will be Tal Piz. Tal Piz, who looks to be on a decent lap here. So just coming through Blanchimont now, using all of the track width there, but just not using too much of the curb. He used a little bit, but not too much. There's a lock up there into the final couple of corners. Double lock up. Unfortunately for him, he's gone really deep, and it's going to affect his run all the way through the end of the lap here. It's only P2 with a 52.5. Who's going to be next across the line? It's going to be the Mercedes of Jim. Oh, using grass and curb there, outside locking there, as you'd probably expect for someone that's gone onto the grass in the wet. And using the curb, but he now comes towards the line, and it's going to be 5th place only, a 53.3, the slowest lap so far of the session. Next across the line will be Sepsi. Sepsi comes into the pit, so it will be the Alpha Tauri of Dresser, who's invalidated, followed by the Haas of Salt. I think will be the next driver to actually set a lap. So just going to run through the final part of the lap there. We keep seeming to catch everyone at this point on the track just as they come through Blanchimont, but as I predicted, it is looking like it's going to dry up then, because the rain has completely stopped and the track is looking drier and drier by the minute. So I wonder if maybe we'll see. And look at that, the time's faster and faster as Salt with a 52.0 goes provisional pole, and Rudy slightly improves to 3rd place. Next across the line will be Rally, who's just coming into the final chicane there. Double lock up once again. The second driver we've seen do that, and he dives into the pits. So next up, I think it's going to be one of the McLarens. Bread has invalidated. Let's just see what Tower Piz is doing. Tower Piz is on a valid lap, so he's actually backing out there. It's going to be Jim, the next one to cross the line. If he does cross the line, he might just back out and go into the pits. It does look like, yeah, he's quite a way down, so no one really looking to make any times here except perhaps Jonah, but I think it's at the point where the track's drying out and it might just be worth pitting, waiting a minute or two and going. They still can get 2 runs in on the soft tyre, I think, maybe just about. So I think that would be the plan for most drivers at this point, as we just watched Jonas come through Blanchimont now, up into the final chicane. You see, quite nice through there. Does he box? He does pit. So, oh, and he actually crashes on his way in, but not anything too major. And he does now get into the pits. Ladamala, let's see what Ladamala is up to. Is he going to cross the line? No, he pits. We have Rudy on track and Salt right in front of him. I'd assume these two will both pit as well, as we actually have the other Haas of Jonah on an outlap. Let's see what ties. He's on the inters. He's doing an outlap on the inters. I'm not sure if I would agree with that one, really. Everyone else is coming into the pits, and I think it's just a case of waiting for it to be dry as Rudy now enters the pits, leaving us only 3 drivers on track, all on outlaps and all on inters. So maybe I'm wrong, maybe the track isn't quite dry enough for the dryers yet, but judging by the amount of people just sat in the pits, I would say that I'm not far off. But you see, there's just basically no spray at this point. It really looks like dry tyres would be best at the moment. Just gonna have to wait and see who's next to leave the pit lane. Looks like it's going to be one of the AlphaTauris who's on softs, so look at that. Slightly know what I'm on about, as the soft tyres have been put on for both Dresser and Bread, as well as Rally, Jonas, and Jim. So definitely time for dries. Now I think they can still get 2 runs in this session, so I know it's annoying not to get all 3 runs in during a dry session, but with how track evolution is going to be going, the last one's going to matter the most. This first run here on softs for these guys will hopefully not be their best times, because the track evolution is going to be so strong for the rest of the session that you can expect these times to be a fair bit slower than the ones coming after them. So yeah, just fingers crossed for these guys that they can get 2 solid, valid laps in for the rest of this session, as we don't want to see anyone starting way down the order because of an invalidation at the end of the session. It looks like only 5 drivers still in the pits. Should expect them to all come out soon. Tower Piz looking like he's coming out on track, as is the Ferrari of Polehouse. But here we are on board with Dresser, then Dresser about to start his 2nd lap of the session, his first valid one at that. So crosses the line to start his first dry run of the session, braking at the 100 metres, just gently gliding the car into La Source. He's using a lot of curb on exit there, maybe a bit too much. As he gets up in the sauce, it's going to hurt his traction. You want to really accelerate on the tarmac and drift out onto the curb. It would be the better option. Now, flat through Eau Rouge, as it wasn't flat in the wet part of this session, obviously, is now flat, as you would expect in the dry. Now coming down, going to brake on the curb between the 150, use all of the curb on the right, all of the curb on the left. Going to try and get over to that left side as quick as you can to take as much speed as you can through the right. Maybe could have done a bit better there, but you're braking at the end of the curb into probably the trickiest corner on the track in terms of braking. Very easy to lock up through there and go wide, but he does quite nicely there. Now through No Name, maybe not using quite enough curb on the inside there, but using a decent amount on the outside to make up for it. Now, Huon, running wide and invalidating, that's the easiest place on the track to do that, as Bread shows us how not to do it, and is now going to be fourth gear through this corner. We want a late apex to maximise your exit through the right-hander, taking that as fast as you can, fifth gear. Now coming into the next right-hander, fourth gear there, as uses all of the inside and outside curbs to complete the middle sector. Now the rest of this lap until the bus stop will be flat. It's all about taking the shortest route around the track all the way until you get to the line. So there you see, just not really taking any unnecessarily long lines before breaking the 100 down into second gear for the bus stop. He's going to flick it left, third gear on exit. They're going to accelerate a straight line, keeping to the right over the line. It's a 42.4 for the first dry lap of this session. Now we're going to quickly run over to, it was Jonas there, sorry, who's crossing the line, and he's going to be followed by Rally. Rally's going to be the third driver to set a dry time, and it's third place with a 43.4. A 42.7 there for Jonas, putting him only 3/10 behind Bread's 42.4. Sepsky, the next driver, who will complete a lap. Looks like a lot of people invalidating there, a lot of people diving back into the pits. In fact, it's not going to be Sepsky, it's going to be Rudy, who pits due to an invalidation. So he only has one chance left in this session. The pressure is on for the championship leader. And now, going to be Salt as he comes into the final couple of corners. Is he able to replicate his form from earlier in the session and get himself up onto that front row? We're going to see in a second as he crosses the line, and he does with a 41.9, putting him in first place, half a second ahead of Bread as it stands. Great stuff from Salt, who has been kind of nowhere for a lot of the season, but he is now flexing his muscles a bit here in Belgium. Sepsky now going to be the next driver to cross the line. Let's see what he's able to do. Second gear, maybe going a bit deep and missing the apex of the second part of the bus stop there. That is going to hurt his time, but he comes across the line at 41.3, and you can just see how much quicker this track is getting by the second. Time's coming down by half a second every time you see someone cross the line. And the next driver to cross the line will be, I don't think it's going to be Jonas. I think everyone's coming into the pit, so I think it's actually going to be Dresser, who comes back out on an outlap now. So I think everyone who's currently on track will pit, or currently on a lap will pit, and then Dresser and Polhouse, who are currently on outlaps, will be the next ones to cross the line on a flying lap. At least is what I think is happening here. Sorry if I make any mistake. But going out quite early actually for their final runs. They went out with well over 3 minutes left. They're going to cross the line probably with about a minute and a half, maybe even just under 2 minutes left, which is quite a lot of time to leave on the table, especially with how much this track is evolving. I would imagine that whoever sets the last lap is in with the best shout of pole. Obviously, if they're doing a bad lap or there's other people who are significantly faster, it won't quite work out that way. But they have the best chance, you would imagine, with the most grip, the most dryness of the track. And yeah, it will really be all up to who can get their lap in the latest, you've got to imagine. But here we see someone who's not leaving their lap too late, Dresser, who's going to cross the line with a minute and 45 seconds left in the session. So got to imagine he's probably gone out a bit earlier with how this track evolution is going, but it's a much smoother turn one from him this time round compared to last. So hopefully he is going to be gaining a lot of time on this lap to help put him inside of a top 10 position. I mean, there's only 15 drivers, so you're more likely than not to end up in the top 10. But that doesn't make it any easier with the level of competition we have here in this top division so far this season. There's a big mistake there through the middle of the chicane. That's going to cost him a fair amount of time, but I still think he can gain a lot of that back with the rest of this lap. So whilst it might not be ideal, it might not be the end of the world at the moment for Dresser. Let's see as he comes into Pouon. This time does not invalidate on the exit. It uses just the right amount of track as Sepsky retires. So he does not think he can improve. So he retires in the pit lane. I think that's probably a mistake considering the track evolution that was going on. But he can do whatever he wants, of course. Just going to follow Dresser here through the final sector. As you can see, sticking over to the right to minimise that run distance. He's going to come over to the left now and do the same on that left side of the track before flicking it into Blanchimont and not using any exit curb there. The exit curb kind of slows you down, braking at 100 metres into the bus stop, turning in as late as you can to open up the second part. And usually you want to short shift out of the bus stop, but Dresser so far this session has continuously chosen not to. Puts himself third with a 42.3, Salt with a 41.4, finishing off his session. Next across the line will be Polhouse, I believe. Polhouse with his first lap of the session goes third place, 42.0 on the medium tyre. So that will be something to watch out for actually, as Jonah has invalidated, so will not get a dry run in this session unfortunately for him. Harm has invalidated, so will not get a lap in this session. Chiquito, the next driver to cross the line on a valid lap. Let's see what he does as he comes through the end of the middle sector. It's 13.2 as he crosses the middle sector split, and now just the run to the line. Only one more braking zone to go. Let's see if he can get it right and put himself on the front row of the grid. I'd imagine it's possible with how fast this track's been getting faster, but you never know. Braking very late there and just barely hitting the apex of the first part of the bus stop, but maybe it's going to work out for him a bit. Let's see as he crosses the line. It's going to be a 41.2, puts himself on provisional pole. Let's see where Rudy's going to put himself. Rudy crosses the line, provisional pole 41.0. And next is going to be Bread, who's invalidated, so he will not get a better lap in. He will be followed by Jonas, who is not invalidated, so he will cross the line and do a 40.9, putting himself on provisional pole for the first time this season, I think, as Jim goes third and Secret goes fifth. We now have Rally moves himself up into ninth, and Tao Piers, where's he going to go? It's TP2 with a 41.0 there, so he puts himself ahead of the main championship rival Rudy. And only driver left to set a lap will be Dresser as he comes into the bus stop and pits. Hello Repass. How you doing? As we just wait on Ladamala now to get wheeled into his pit box. There we go. That is the end to what was a pretty exciting qualifying session there. We had drivers who invalidating laps. Of course we had the transition from wet to dry, so really all over the place as a qualifying session. But here we have Jonas on pole, and he is followed by Tao Piz on the front row, only 9 hundredths of a second separating them, with Rudy not too far back either, only just over a tenth of pole. Then we have Jim 2/10 of pole, with Chiquito, Secret being 3/10 of pole. We have Sepsky, Salt, Polehouse on the mediums, and Rally rounding out the top 10. On a fresh set of tyres we have Dresser, Bread, Jonah, Ladamala and Harm, who did not get a time in during that session. Jonah and Ladamala, also important to note, did not get a dry run in that session, so yeah. But yeah, it's going to be quite interesting to see. Obviously we have some quite fast drivers a bit out of position here, outside the top 10, and that will allow them to take the alternate strategy, which could be quite dangerous here at this track, as it's traditionally not the hardest to stay inside of someone's DRS. You know, the trains can form quite badly here at this track. That, you know, you just get the whole grid in one long train. It's all down to that one big long back straight where, as long as you can keep it together through the rest of the lap, and it is quite a long lap, so it's very easy to make a mistake and um, lose the window that you need to stay inside that DRS. But I think at the end of the day, these drivers are all good enough to put together a lap, as we saw there in quali. Obviously some of them invalidating, but invalidating won't make a huge difference unless you're doing it continuously and getting penalties. So it is what it is. Obviously in the race also it's a bit easier to keep it on the track because the car's going a little bit slower. You've got a bit more fuel on board, so yeah, top speed's not quite there, and generally the track limits are a bit easier to spot as you're not pushing the car to its absolute limit every single corner like you would be in quali. So I wouldn't expect to see too many penalties here today, but it is certainly a possibility as Jonas finding out the troubles of being at the front of the formation lap as everyone else behind him is trying to back up, as to not lose as much tyre temperature by the time they get to the grid. Obviously the longer you sit on the grid waiting for the back of the train, the colder your tyres are going to get, meaning that it's going to be harder to get a good getaway off the start and hold your position, especially as we have that big long straight after the first corner. You know, you have the first corner straight, then you have the flat Rouge and Radion, which, okay, you could make a mistake, you could slide off the track, invalidate, get a warning, all those kinds of things, but as long as you're doing it decently enough, obviously dirty air will make that a bit tricky, but as I said before, these guys should all be good enough to not worry about that too much. So if you're following well through a Rouge and Radion, you've then got a huge long straight just for slipstream and ERS and DRS once we get to that point in the race. So holding your position might not be as easy as it seems as we finally get to the grid, and looks like the field's quite nicely bunched, so it doesn't look like these front guys should be losing too much in terms of tyre temperature, as the back of the grid has already formed. So probably the quickest grid formation we've had ever here in ALR, as the whole field just nice and bunched up. Obviously there's less drivers to wait for as well, but we now wait on the lights as they are now on. We have 3, 4 and 5 red lights, and we are away for the Belgian Grand Prix. It's been a good launch there from Jonas, and also Rudy Taubpiz on the outside, not looking quite so good. He's also on the outside for turn 1, which isn't the nicest place to be, but he does get a good run out of the turn 1 exit, and that allows him to draw alongside Jonas as they run up to Eau Rouge. A big scrap in the background. We see many cars wide as we come down that straight, and now it's going to be Rudy's chance to get a move on Jonas, but he's not going to be able to get as much momentum as he would have hoped. Jonas grabbing that slipstream from Taubpiz, now Rudy trying to do the same, but just having to back out before they get to the corner, and Jonas not really able to find a way around the outside there. So Taubpiz taking the lead of the race from Jonas and Rudy. Chiquito holding on to 4th place from both Mercedes drivers, as that's very wide there from Secret, and that allows Sepsky to slip up the inside, maybe even Polhaus there on the mediums, but Polhaus wisely backing out, not risking too much early on in the race. And we then have Salt and Dresser rounding out the top 10 with Rally P11. Just look how close he is to the back of Dresser there, maybe going for a move on the softer compound, not quite going for it, as we have Jonah followed by Harm, and then Ladamala and Bread going side by side. Ladamala getting the better of the McLaren driver, as we look to see quite a it's only 5 drivers less, but it seems quite a small grid, just visually. But anyway, we head back to the front, and not straight to the front, as we actually see Secret getting back past Sepsky through Blanchimont. So he does take that place back behind his teammate, but he's hit his teammate in the rear. That causes him to go deep. Doesn't look like any damage for the Mercedes driver, and no position swap there, so I think they won't be too mad about that one. Although there is a bit of ghosting going on, suggesting that maybe there's a bit of lag, as Secret's actually in Valtteri Bottas's car with the number 77. That's quite interesting, actually. Does have his own helmet though, so I'm not sure what's going on there, as the traditional leaderboard glitch happens once again. We actually going to try and cut forwards to Rudy. Where's Rudy? There's Rudy. As he goes round the outside of Jonas into the right-hander at the end of the long straight. So he's moved his way up into P2 and can now get after Tal Piz and see if he can have a good fight with his championship rival. Of course, coming into the second half of the season, drivers will be thinking a lot more about that championship, as it becomes ever more important as the leaderboard has now sorted itself out. And we can watch the two Mercedes running very close together here through Pouhon. Actually, I think the delta between them has glitched, because I don't think they're holding the exact same delta. It's actually in the background. We have Ladamala losing out to Bread there. So Bread moving his way up into P14 in the same place Ladamala overtook him last lap. So a bit of payback there for the McLaren driver, whose teammate is currently leading this race. Rudy slowly reeling him in though, but looks like he's not using quite as much ERS through this section of the lap. You can see that delta getting bigger, even though they are on a straight, and these cars should have equal speed in a straight line unless there's any setup differences. What I will actually do is turn on telemetry tree so we can just have a look at the ERS usage, and Tal Piz at this stage of the race with a little bit more, but Rudy with the fastest lap. Rudy already down to 30% ERS, Tal Piz on 65%, so the advantage definitely here going to the McLaren driver, as DRS is enabled in this race, and Jonas has already found himself outside of the DRS window for Rudy, which could put him under a bit of pressure here from the Red Bull of Chiquito. Chiquito having a much better run through Oruge and Radion. If to make things worse, he's going to have a big long run here. He gets very close, under a tenth now. He's going to go to the inside. Is he going to go for the move? He does up the inside, but he's going to squeeze Jonas through the second part there, as Jonas looks to get the better run now through the third section. Took a much wider line, doesn't quite get the run he needs though, so he has to stay behind the Red Bull for now, and Chiquito moving his way up into third, maybe looking to get after our two leaders if they start to battle. So Jonas really, from grabbing pole, just starting to go backwards, and that looks like it was a warning there for him too, as he runs very wide at Pouhon. So there's now sector 2 yellows, and it's one of the Houses. It's Jonah going very slowly, so he's lost a lot of positions, and Jim now looking like he's in the gravel, so he rejoins fairly unsafely there, but was in the gravel in a very strange place to be, so I don't know what's happened there, but it looks like maybe had contact with his teammate, who we have seen his teammate has been missing braking points all session and is now out of ERS, so very interesting stuff there. But now we have Polhaus looking for a move on Sepsky potentially into the bus stop, decides not to go for it there, playing it a bit smarter. He's going to look for a run out of turn 1, maybe just hold behind until he guarantees that he gets himself the DRS before going for the overtake. Obviously, if you overtake at this point of the lap, you're just going to open yourself to a counter-attack 2 corners later. So, very smart driving at the moment from the Ferrari driver. As we now climb up Eau Rouge through Radion, and just see how close these two cars are together. It probably shows that there's a bit more pace in that Ferrari at the moment, as the soft tyres will probably start to wear out a bit on these front runners. But the DRS that Sepsky had off of Secret just saving him a bit there, just not allowing Polhaus to get any closer than he currently is, and allowing him to hold position for now. But Secret is looking like he's pulling away slightly from Sepsky, so maybe Sepsky gonna have to get a move on here if he wants to keep within that DRS and help himself, because if he loses that DRS, he will, as we now have the other Haas of Salt going slowly. Don't know what's happened to him. Maybe a mistake there at Pool and hitting one of the curbs funny. Can very easily send the car into a slide, but he hasn't quite gone all the way to the back, only dropping down to 11th place at the moment. So not the end of the world for him as it stands, but not great either, unfortunately, as we now have very close to the front Rudy and Tao Piz. Rudy within a tenth as we come up to the bus stop. He decides not to go for the move, both drivers locking up into the first part of the bus stop, and now Chiquito has joined the fight and he's dragged along Jonas, Secret, Sepsky and Polehouse with him, all forming to make one train of about 7 cars here. So starting to see what I was saying about it being quite difficult to break apart trains at this track, as really we have 3 main trains as it stands. We have top 7, then we have 8th, 9th and 10th in the train, and then 11th, 12th, 13th and 14th in their own train. But now let's see, is Talpiz able to defend from Rudy? Rudy just staying behind a bit. He looks like he's saving a bit of ERS here. He's just going to use that DRS off the back of Talpiz to help himself save a little bit of ERS. Someone who's not doing that at the moment is Ladamala, who gets past Salt easily with the DRS there. Secret being the first driver to get a time penalty in this race for track limits. As we cut back to the front, and we have a big mistake there from Jonah, but he's managed to keep it facing the right direction. Someone who has not quite managed to get it facing the right direction is Jim, who now has damage after a mistake out of the right-hander. Not sure how he's done that. Maybe run a bit wide on exit and dipped a wheel in grass or gravel. I think that's a fairly easy way to spin, but it's not often you see spins there, as Polehouse now getting himself a 3-second time penalty in this race. Is right on the back of Sepsky, only 6/10 separating him and the car ahead, but unfortunately he's got to start looking about 3 seconds back, which will put him behind Dresser as it stands. But obviously a long way to go in this race, so that could all change as things go on. Harm now also getting himself a time penalty. As look how close this train is, as we have our first stop, and it's Sepsky. Sepsky here on lap 6, followed by Rally into the pits, so they'll be pitting for mediums and going to the end of the race. As we just look at the tyres, actually Sepsky went for a set of softs, as did Rally, so they're going to be 2 stopping in this race. I'm assuming they'll go soft, soft, medium. I can't see them using the hards, but usually at this track you can go to lap 6 on the softs and pit for mediums that will go to the end, so a bit of a strange strategy from my point of view, but oh well. Does just help out those guys who are behind a bit, make up a couple of positions, I guess. And that was a very strange rotating shot there from Codemasters, but I guess it allowed us to see what was going on here. The answer was not much here, as Rudy running very wide there, definitely getting himself a warning for track limits. I don't think there's any. I think there's literally no way he's gone that wide and not got a warning. So I think that's fairly safe to say. Not going to be checking warnings or penalties throughout this race to leave it a bit more of a surprise. But I haven't seen Tao Piz leave the track at any point. I don't think so. Just bear that in mind, as Dressbassen really falling further and further off the back of Polehouse. Polehouse struggling to get past Secret, despite what will probably be a tyre advantage at this stage. As we now have another driver into the pits, it's Jonas, who's followed by Secret. So both drivers into the pits off of those soft tyres, and maybe the mediums for them. Although, looking at what happened last time, maybe another set of softs. As look how close Rudy was getting through turn 1 there. As Salt also pits, it's going to be mediums for Secret. It's going to be softs for Jonas, and it's going to be softs for Rally and mediums for Salt. As actually now a bit of pressure being applied to Rudy from Chiquito, as Bread now passes Dresser for 5th place. Quite an easy move. Looks like Dresser just ran out of VRS there and had nothing to defend with. and these guys I'm sure will be struggling really for the rest of this race to really do anything about the train ahead. But Polehouse losing a lot of time there, suddenly dropping outside of the 1 second. I don't know what's happened to him, but maybe struggling for a bit of grip through that section of the track and has made a small mistake, a bit of a slide, because he is now catching up once again and is nearly back within DRS, so not sure where he lost that time. But these top three here all looking very close. Any single one of them could win it, and it's really all going to be about timing. And Chiquito is really hoping he can jump one of these two in the pits, I would imagine, and maybe hoping that he can just kind of sit in second for a lot of this race, as Rudy is probably trying to do right now. Just sit in second, make sure you're managing all your ERS, managing your tyres. As Tao Piz and Chiquito both pit, but Rudy stays out, so he could be under threat from an undercut here. And this could be, as it's a strange pit entry, absolutely brilliant for Chiquito for his hopes of getting past the Williams driver. So it's up to Rudy now to put in the best lap he can, not looking like he's going to be under too much pressure from Polehouse, so that won't be too much of an issue, as Chiquito chooses the softs and Tao Piz chooses the mediums. So I was talking about Chiquito's hoping to get past Rudy, but now he's doing a two-stop. I don't think he's really helped himself at all, maybe even just completely thrown himself out of contention in this race, which is a real shame, as he's ended up behind Jonas as they exit the pits. Tao Piz just ahead of Jonas in this case, but maybe not for long, as Jonas with the DRS not quite close enough though to get the move to work, as Tao Piz using a lot of his ERS to defend there. Gonna just have a quick look at what's going on between the Haas and Harm here. Harm is on the hard tyre, so you'd expect that it'll cause him to be quite susceptible to a DRS overtake in a minute. But I'm just watching the gap, because Harm is just about keeping inside that 1 second to Dresser, which could be crucial. If he finds himself outside of that 1 second, he could be under some real threat here from Jonah. But at the moment, Harm is doing very well just to make sure he's not falling outside of that gap he needs. You're assuming it will rain. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility, but it doesn't, well, not that I can see the sky too well, it doesn't really look like there's much indication of rain coming. But at the same time, you've got to say, if there is rain coming, these guys who started on the mediums will have a really good time with things, because they can just take those mediums to whenever it starts raining, you would have thought. As Rudy now does pit, he comes out behind Chiquito and Jonas, so has dropped a couple of positions, and Rudy has chosen the soft tyre. So he's either, well, he's definitely doing a two-stop, but maybe a good indication that it will rain at some point, as Chiquito gets past Jonas, and Jonas is out of this race. He's crashed on the straight, and there is a full safety car. So that really screws up the strategy for those guys who started on the hards and mediums, as they can't take softs to the end. It is another 13 laps to the end of this race, although maybe they can be brave. Some of these guys have taken softs for 8 laps. Maybe they can be brave and hope that the safety car preserves their tyres a bit. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting call, but we're going to just ride on board with Polehouse here and see how he reacts to this safety car. Of course, safety car going to be bringing the whole field back together, so we're going to start seeing the trains get bigger again, and maybe this will work out for the soft tyre runners, who were looking like they may be falling out of contention this race. That is going to be a stop from Polehouse. Now, I would have thought that if it was going to rain, that Polehouse would have stayed out. So I think, especially looking at the sky, that squashes most of the chances for rain, as Polehouse does choose the softs. Let's see what Bread chooses. It's also going to be softs for bread, so looking like a lot of these guys, Dresser also choosing softs, Jonah, softs. So a lot of these guys are choosing the soft tyre to go to the end of the race. Which I think could give them even more of an advantage, as Bread there got quite badly held in the pits. He's lost quite a few positions purely just by being in a pit slot that's earlier on in the pit lane, which is really unfortunate really. But you'd have thought that all the guys that have gone soft so far in this race are going to lose out to the guys who just pitted for softs just now. So yeah, I think no matter what, it was a very strange strategy to choose, and I'm just kind of confused about the decision behind it, to do a two-stop at a track where you get these big long trains and that makes it so hard to overtake. But oh well, we will just wait on Jim here to catch up. He is technically the last one. Actually, I think Ladamala. No, I thought Jim was lapped there for a second, but he's not. But Polhaus, Dresser and Harm probably not too happy with this safety car, as it does now mean that their penalties are going to affect them quite badly. Jim and Secret not so much, they are quite far down the order anyway, both outside the points. But yeah, those inside the points with penalties at the moment are going to be hoping for a good safety car restart, but hopefully for them the trains can split up a bit so that they lose less positions at the end with those penalties, and of course those drivers who have to stop again will help open up the gaps. So I think there's definitely potential there for a bit of a mix-up in the grid. I don't think the safety car will come in this lap. I know Jim is about to catch it, but I think it's too late on. I think the safety car is going to go another lap and come in at the end of lap 11. So what we're going to do, is it's the longest lap of the season, is we're going to go to the interview lounge. If I can find it, there we go. And the questions for this week was number 1, what do you think of this track? Number 2, who will finish on the podium? Number 3, what will the pole time be? Number 4, what are your thoughts on the short track being on a short track? Hold on, this is from weeks ago. Sorry, that's my bad, guys. Number 1, what do you think of this track? Number 2, who do you think will finish on the podium? Number 3, what do you think the pole time will be? Number 4, we're heading into the second half of the season now. What are your aims for the rest of it? Number 5, who will improve the most in the second half of the season? And number 6, who has been overperforming in the first half and will drop off towards the end? Rudy says it's one of his best tracks. He thinks that Jonah, Dowdek and Bread will be the podium. Well, Dowdek's not here. Jonah's currently 8th and Bread's currently 9th. So, maybe not. He says a 140.5 will be pole. I don't think it was. He says his goal is to win the championship, and he thinks that Jim will improve the most in the second half of the season. Unfortunately for him, Jim is currently 14th and last. He says that nobody has been overperforming and that no one will drop off in the last part of the season. Jim says one of his worst tracks, he thinks the podium will be Talpiz, Rudy and Chiquito, whereas currently Polhaus, Sepsky and Talpiz, but Talpiz, Chiquito and Rudy are 3rd, 4th and 5th, so it's definitely possible. He says the pole time will be a 140.7. I think that's a bit closer to where it was. He says that his goal is to have 80% spin-free races. Well, this will not be one of them, unfortunately for him. He says that number 5, he thinks Chiquito will improve the most. Chiquito's P4, so I definitely think that's living up to it. And he thinks that Sepsky was underperforming, and that he thinks no one he was overperforming as the safety car is in this lap. So we'll cut to the front. Finally, Jonah's got mixed feelings. He thinks the podium will be Rudy, Dowdek and Talpiz. Dowdek's not here, of course. It thinks the pole time will be a 40.6. Not right. It says no more DNFs. Well, he's still in the race for now. He thinks Chiquito will improve. He thinks that Rudy will drop off, but he doesn't know if that's likely to happen. And Polehouse here really backing up the field as he goes through Blanchimont very early then, long before we get to the braking zone, but it does seem to have caught out Sepsky and Tao Piz a little bit as he now bolts through the final section of the lap. He's got to get a good exit out of here, and we'll see what the gaps are. It actually looks like Sepsky is able to keep with him, but Tao Piz has struggled a bit more on that restart, of course, on the medium tyre. In fact, the only driver on the grid currently on the medium tyre, so that could go against him in the first couple of laps here after the safety car restart, but I'm sure that will start to play into his hands as the race goes on. Rudy kind of under pressure here from Dresser, but not really, since Dresser's also got a bit of pressure from Harm. So you'd imagine that Dresser's not really going to go for a move here. Neither is Harm by the looks of it, so no one going for a move on the safety car restart, unfortunately. Just kind of holding position as Chiquito actually fallen off the back of Tao Piz already, despite Tao Piz being on that medium tyre. So that's quite interesting actually, as we actually have a couple of gaps starting to open up. You can see here there's between Chiquito and Tao Piz, and there's also between Raleigh and Bread. And then Jim has just generally fallen off the back as well. So we are starting to see some separation here already at the end of one lap of racing. And there will, at the end of this lap, be 10 more to go. So hopefully those who pitted for the softs don't have to worry too much about their tyres to the end of this race. But I was saying earlier how it didn't seem like it was going to rain, but it has kind of gotten a bit darker all of a sudden. So during that safety car period it has got darker, and Ladamala making the first move of the safety car restart, and he gets through on Salt, who nearly drives off the track there at the exit. He was given enough room, so it's a bit odd that he went so wide. But now we have Harm making a move on Dresser into turn 1. They're going to stay side by side on the run up to Eau Rouge. Harm using all of his ERS to make sure he's the driver in front when they get to Eau Rouge. But is he going to be able to keep it on exit? Look how close Dresser is. He's going to have that slipstream. He's going to have that slingshot as they come down the straight. But a lot of ERS being used here by Harm that could cost him later on in this race. But for now, it's helping him hold position on Dresser, who's desperately looking for a way through, but just cannot find it as they have a small touch there through the corner. And that's cost him a fair bit. Now maybe going to lose out to Jonah. Jonah decides not to go for it, as it was probably a bit risky into that corner at this stage of the race. But a lot going on here, but the positions are holding. But what this has done is it's meant that Harm has dropped off the back of Rudy, kind of leaving Chiquito and Rudy in their own little train, which could work out in Rudy's favour as he looks to get past the Rebel driver. He's looking fairly faster as it does now start to rain, so the rain has come down. It just makes you think, why did the medium runners pit? I'm sure if with the safety car they could have taken their tyres a few more laps to this rain period. I know probably would have been slow on the restart, but I feel like the track position would have been better in this position than what has happened. Look how close these three cars are as we come up into the bus stop. We have Jonah trying around the outside of Dresser as they've both brake way too late there, and that allows Bread to try and come 3 wide as they've touched, and that's round. Dresser is round, and Jonah's ghosting as Bread goes through him. It's weird. Okay. They're still inside one another as they come through turn 1, and looks like Bread's going to get the better exit here, but maybe a little bit of ERS being used here. No, Jonah does now fully drop behind, but that does mean he will get DRS as Bread is way off the track. He spins. It's going to go straight into that wall. He is out of the race. Bread has retired from the race. And that has brought out another yellow flag and another full safety car as Tao Piz just about defends from Sepsky as they come up into the chicane there. The safety car may have just saved Tao Piz a bit there. Sepsky looking quite dangerous, but the second full safety car, and you've got to imagine that they might all take this opportunity to pit for inters. But it kind of depends how long this rain period goes on for, as to how that one goes for them. There's Polehouse, unfortunately, having his gap cut right back down. He had over 2 seconds to Talpiz behind, and now is going to have to lose all of that gap once again for the second time this race, and somehow try and make it back up later on. But maybe the rain will work out well for him. Maybe he can do well in the wet conditions. It doesn't quite look like it's raining hard enough for any inters though, so it'd be quite interesting to see who takes the gamble to pit and who stays out. It's going to be Polehouse staying out. What's Talpiz going to do? Talpiz pits, Sepsky pits, Chiquito pits, Rudy pits, Harm pits, Jonah pits, Rally pits, Secret pits, Ladamala pits, Salt pits, Jim pits, and Dresser stays out. So only 2 drivers staying out, the rest of the field pitting. Quite interesting there overall, and it is the inters going on to Talpiz and Jonah. In fact, I think it's just going to be inters on all round for these guys. Could it be a mistake that Polehouse and Dresser didn't pit here? Especially since Polehouse would have had track position, Dresser would have had to double stack, but I kind of feel like he was last anyway, so in fact he wouldn't have had to double stack because he doesn't have a teammate in this race, so it was just completely his choice to pit there. Very odd. But they don't think that the rain's going to be around long enough for the inters, or do they think that it's not going to get wet fast enough for it to be worth pitting right now? I don't know. I think under the safety car, it's quite a long period that we're going to be under the safety car. You can just see how heavy it's raining. I feel like those drivers who pit onto the inters are going to get the best out of this one. I just think the track's going to get quite a bit wetter under this safety car, to the point where the inters will be looking like the right choice. But we'll just have to wait and see. As this is now the second safety car in this race. No VSCs so far, but 2 full safety cars, which I don't think we've seen in quite a bit from Tier 1 here. Seeing just 2 consecutive safety cars like that. They weren't right after one another, but they weren't exactly spread out. As something's happened to Secret here. Is he spun under the safety car and broken his front wing? So he will be last and he'll have to stop again, which, if we're unlucky enough, could cause an extra lap onto this safety car, as I think the safety car could have come in this lap as the field was bunched, maybe with the exception of Jim, but I don't think that really matters for one driver to not be bunched up, as he is now bunched up by the time we get to the bus stop. But I have a feeling Secret now going to pit, and that will well, it will depend on how long it takes for him to catch up to the pack. It probably won't take him too long once he has a fresh wing on. As we just see Mercedes pit crew there fixing his front wing. And just watching that gap as the drivers just coming out the top of Radion. It is looking very wet here, so I think Dresser and Polehouse have made a huge mistake with their choice to not pit for inters, and that Talpiz is now effectively the leader of this race, if I'm being completely honest. Especially since we saw that slide from Bread as he came out the top of Eau Rouge and Radion. It was definitely a greasy track surface even back then, and ever since we've just had a couple of laps under a slow moving safety car where everyone's not really been clearing as much water. I don't think that really matters as much in this game, but It might. And so the track's just been able to get wetter. And you look at it, it doesn't quite seem as wet as it was in quali, but I wouldn't say it really looks dry either. Quite interesting that it clouded up and started raining so quickly. It all happened within that first safety car period, where it went from nice sunshine to quite grey and wet. The track is taking quite a while to transition at the moment. Obviously there's no DRS disabled indicator because the safety car's out, so you don't get DRS anyway. As Secret's got his overtake enabled, which won't help him not spin and hit people, as he now realises. We're just going to watch Polehouse now as he once again backs up the field quite significantly. Now we're going to have to see if he decides to go at a different point to where he did last time to try and catch out the drivers behind, or whether he'll just go just before Blanchimont once again. He is backing the field up quite a lot, allowing him to go whenever he wants. Maybe adding a bit of doubt in the mind of the drivers behind, but he doesn't go where he did before. He goes just after Blanchimont this time, which is not much, but a little bit later than he did last time. So, and Jonah with a 5-second time penalty for severe collision with Rally. Let's see if it's the opposite way around as well. So no, as there's a big slide there from Dresser as he comes out of the final corner, and Tal Piz now going to be able to look to his inside as we come into turn 1. Doesn't quite go for it as a Secret gets past his teammate Jim there. Jim moving back down to last, and now Tal Piz with a very good run out of the first corner, just climbing up the hill. Maybe under threat from Sepsky though. Maybe Sepsky behind can use a bit of overtake and put doubts in Tal Piz's mind about a move here. Doesn't quite look like it. Tal Piz not really able to get the move to work anyway. Just see Harm here making the move on Ladamala as the camera doesn't quite go as far back as I would like, as he touched quite wide there. So Ladamala pushing Harm off the road at the second part of the chicane, maybe just sliding about in the wetter conditions as Secret and Salt now going at it through the long right-hander. Looks like Secret getting out on top over the Mercedes driver there, so good restart there from Secret after what wasn't the best safety car period. And actually I would say that Polehouse has gapped Dresser quite nicely, and Dresser is holding the rest of the field up, so maybe the choice to stay on the soft tyres will work out here. Of course the soft tyres being the best tyres in these colder conditions out of the slick choices at least, but Dresser catching Polehouse quite quickly through that section, so maybe a bit stronger through the middle sector, but Tal Piz dropping off the back of Dresser too, so very strange stuff going on. As the track looks wet, it's definitely raining, but the softs still look like they're the best as Chiquito loses 2 positions there as he's actually lost a bit of his front wing. I thought he was about to run straight into the back of his teammate there, but luckily, oh, what's he doing? Luckily ghosted, but then cut right back across into Ladamala and Salt, hitting both of them there, so not the greatest driving ever there from Chiquito, and that really hurts him in this race as he was looking good for a podium. He goes onto the hards and retires, becoming the 3rd retirement in this race. Polehouse still looking quite comfortable in the lead as Jim gets 3 seconds for multiple warnings, so that will be track limits, unfortunately for him. That was weird from Chiquito, yeah, I agree. Oh, hey Fortunel, as Salt now with the 3-second time penalty, and Tal Piz finally passing Dresser, so Dresser was a long way ahead just now, but he's now struggling a lot, and he's just turned in on by Rudy there. Completely turned in on by the Williams driver. I've got to say I would probably blame the Williams for that one, in all honesty. He did just kind of turn in quite aggressively. I know that Dresser's on the soft tyres, which aren't looking too great for the conditions as Tao Piz now passes Polehouse, so it is truly wet at this stage. But you've got to say that maybe Rudy could have left a bit more room there for the struggling AlphaTauri. Is yeah, Polehouse just losing places one after another now. He's going to lose out to Jonah now in a second. And also rally into the bus stop. He just about gets it slowed down and is able to pit here. Dresser quite a way behind, struggling a bit more in these changeable conditions than it looked like Polehouse was. And it is the Inters going on to Polehouse as he's now down in 11th place, but still 3.5 laps to go, so anything can happen. And Polehouse retires anyway. So never mind. Becomes the 4th retirement in this race, and Jonah passes Sepsky there for P3. We also have a fight over P8 there between Secret and Salt. And Jonah moved his way up into P3 very nicely past the Alpha. So look how wet that is now. Definitely time for the intermediates, as the rain really coming down at the moment. There's Rudy really quite a way off the back of Tao Piz, if I'm being honest. Of course he has Jonah behind, but Jonah has that penalty, so really looking like it's going to be all up to Rudy here to chase down the leader if we want to get any kind of fighting for the lead in the rest of this race. But Ladamala now actually getting very close to the back of Harm, as Harm looking like he's had a very poor exit out of the second sector split. Is Ladamala able to find a way past in this section? I don't think so, but of course there is no DRS to worry about, so he doesn't have to worry about where he makes the move on track like he would in the dry. He goes up the inside of the bus stop, going a bit deep. There's a bit of contact as they touched again, as there's a big mistake from Rally in front, and that's going to be a drag race down to turn 1 as Rally now gets involved. They're 3 wide coming into turn 1. Rally losing both positions there. Harm coming out on top. Ladamala still behind him, but has still made up a position nonetheless. But it's going to be a poor exit there from the Red Bull. He went very wide and got up onto the curb, as Rally now losing out to Secret, and Sepsky and Jim in the pits for wets. So they think it's wet enough for the full wet tyre, and maybe some guys here will agree, as Harm runs well off the track and gets himself a penalty. And Ladamala now just looking for a way through, but it's not going to come at this point of the track, as looks like he had quite a poor run through Rouge and Radion. There's a bit of a slide there from him. Is he maybe going to start losing out to Secret? Secret with a great restart there. He was last place in the restart, now up to 6th here on lap 20 with 2.5 laps to go. Let's see who's going to be able to come out on top. Dresser pits for wets as well, so he thinks it's worth it. I'm not sure it is with how far behind he is, but I guess he's got to try something, as there's a big moment there from Secret. Just about catches the car, and he has another one on exit of Puon for good measure. But you can see the car's really creeping round at the moment, really showing that probably is time for the wet tyres. Just looking at the gap between Sepsky and Salt there. Sepsky catching very rapidly, so it went from a very long period of transitioning from dry to inters to a very sudden period of inters to wets, as it really started raining out of nowhere here in this race. And someone in the comments called it, but really at the start of the race it looked so dry, blue skies, that you wouldn't have thought it was coming, but it has come, well, fairly obviously. Here we see Secret still all over the back of Ladamala. Ladamala not quite getting as close to Harm as he was before. Secret looking like he's got much better pace as it stands. Just watching the gaps out front as well. There's maybe a mistake there from Rudy. Jonah gained a lot of time, as Sepsky now passed Salt already. So those wet tyres are absolutely rapid in these conditions, and Jim passed Salt as well. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on where those guys finish. In all honesty, we could maybe see Sepsky finishing on the podium, because the gaps aren't that big. And it's only going to get wetter and wetter from here, you've got to imagine. But maybe I'm getting a bit ahead of myself here. Yeah, I know that it wouldn't make sense for everyone to go on softs for their second stint otherwise, but it was very strange looking at how dry it looked for them to be on softs. For them to be expecting rain, but obviously from a commentary position, we don't really have any data for weather or anything, which is quite unfortunate. But I guess it is what it is, and we just had to guess what was going on. Maybe hopefully in future games we can kind of get some kind of way of looking at a weather radar or something, what we can expect in terms of weather. Maybe we can go just below the leaderboard there or something. I don't know. Would be nice at least, but just watching these wet tyre runners, looks like Sepsky's now going to get onto the back of Ray. As I say, he gets on the back of him, all of a sudden he's overtaken him and he's through. So they're just showing how good those wet tyres are. He's now got a 2.3 second gap to Ladamala. And let's see how quickly he closes this. It's already down to 2 seconds. So yeah, Alpha podium, it could be. Definitely possible here for Sepsky to get on the podium if he keeps driving like this, but it is now the final lap of the race, so he's got to get a move on no matter what he does, and I would say it's probably a bit unlikely that he gets himself onto the podium, but 5th place, maybe 4th if he gets a really big push on, is on the cards. As we have yellows, and it is for Mersalt, who DNFs, becomes the 5th retirement in this race, us with only 10 drivers. And there won't be a VSC or safety car for this. You never get one on the final lap, unfortunately. The game doesn't do that kind of thing. Look at that. Sepsky already right on the back of Ladamala. He's just going to breeze past him on the stroke. Well, not quite breeze past him, but into the braking zone. You've got to imagine he's got this move done with those far superior tyres. And just coming through this middle sector is where you can really expect him to have the biggest advantage over his rivals. Up into 6th place now, already closing in on Secret, who was looking very strong earlier on in this race, but ever since it got a lot wetter has not quite been able to keep up the same level of pressure on Harm. And look at that, we're only a few corners later and already Sepsky looking for the move on Secret into Puon. He's going to go up the inside, backs out there, probably the smart idea. Puon not really an overtaker spot. He is going to have better traction on exit, he knows this, so it's just about finding a way through. Here, is he going to go not quite into the chicane? He's running out of spaces to make this move in this lap. If he wants to get into 4th place, he's really got to do something about it now. He goes round the outside, not much room given there by Secret, but it still works for Sepsky. Just how much more grip he has on those wets is insane, and now he's already got a run on Harm with that much better exit despite the overtake, and coming into the final sector he's moved his way up into 4th place. You've just got to think, another lap and he could win this race, but looking like Tao Piz is going to be the winner here, as Rudy caught right up to him at the end there, so Rudy really giving him a run for his money, but it's going to be Tao Piz who takes the win. Rudy in 2nd, Jonah in 3rd, and look how close Sepsky was to that 3rd position. So we have a crash in the background, and it's Ladamala who's round. He's reset to track right at the last corner there, and he's going to come home in 8th. He's going to actually come home in 9th as Jim and Rally are ahead of him. There's quite a big crash, and Dresser's going to come home for the final point in 10th place. A long way down, but he still gets a point for it. So that's what happens when you don't give up and retire, as you might just get yourself a point just for going to the end of the race, as has been the case here today. And what a crazy race. What a crazy finish. You just got to maybe think what could have happened if someone had pitted for wets a lap earlier or something. Could have been a completely different story. Such a long lap here that those kinds of things can happen over the course of a lap. And yeah, that was very crazy, but it's great to see that charge from Sepsky. Only just 4th place Could have been third with a couple more corners on the lap, but wasn't quite to be for him today. But definitely a good effort for fourth place. Tal Piz, your winner here today, will move him up into second in the championship as Bread retired from the race. Rudy will still hold the championship lead though. The gap at the front coming down to what I think is 30 points. So yeah, pole house there with the fastest lap. Who's got the next fastest lap? It is Tal Piz, I think. No, 44.3 there from Secret. So I think he might get the fastest lap point since Bolhouse did retire. But yeah, what a mad race that was. Definitely not the normal type of race you get out of Belgium. It was looking at the start like we were going to have a bit of a DRS train boring race, but it really picked up all thanks to the safety car and the weather. So thank you. Oh yeah, Sepsky did get on the podium. Harm had the penalty, didn't he? I completely forgot about Harm's penalty. So Sepsky did get on the podium. I thought Sepsky had a penalty too. I must have been wrong. Well done to Sepsky for getting on the podium then. Yeah, Harm had 6 seconds. So great, even better there for Sepsky. Definitely my driver of the day for that late charge there, to get himself onto the podium from what was basically last place when he pitted onto the wets. I know last place at the time was only like 10th, but still had to make up a lot of time. So good stuff from the Alpha, and they were talking before about maybe a double points for Alpha. Well, they've got a podium, so how about that? I'm sure that's not what they were expecting out of this race today, but they have got it done. And just going to check the other stream, see who else is still live. We have Tier 4, who's finished, and Tier 2, who have finished. So we were the last ones once again this week. So thank you all for coming. It's been great to commentate for you again this week. Really enjoyed this race. One of the better ones of the season so far for sure, and a great way to kick off the second half of the season. So hopefully you can join us for the other 5 races. Next week we have, if I can find the calendar, we have Italy, so that should be another good one. Italy usually gives us a decent race. Yeah. Well, if we get anything like we had today in Italy, it's going to be an absolutely mental race, especially with how the long braking zones in Italy usually pose a bit of a challenge, and a fair bit of overtaking. So yeah, can expect pretty good racing there. But that's going to be it from me. Make sure to check out tiers 3, 5 and 6, which will all run on the Sunday 8 PM UK time, and of course Sprint League running on the Tuesday at 8 PM UK time. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty good rest of the season, I think. Lots to play for, so hopefully you can join us for next week. Hope you all had a good time, and we'll see you next week for Italy. Goodbye.